In this video, I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can create static tables in your Power BI reports. We're going to go through them step by step together, how you can create them using Power Query, and also how you can create them using DAX. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So static tables, as the name suggests, are tables that typically don't change when you refresh your Power BI reports. It's a handy option to have if you need to have tables that, for example, won't need to change every time you refresh your reports. The typical static tables you would need are, let's say, for mapping tables or dimension tables that won't really change for the duration of your report. So instead of importing them from files, you can simply just create static tables for them that are excluded from the report refresh so that it doesn't add as another thing for your Power BI reports to refresh every time the refresh is triggered. So instead of importing this data from a file, for example, like you typically would with your other data sources, you can just create a static table that is excluded from your refreshes so that it's one less thing to be refreshed by your report. So today I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can create static tables, starting with the enter data. So first here, I want to show you this mapping table that I created for age grouping. So I would typically create a mapping table that lets me group ages in certain groups, and they most likely won't ever change. So here we have the different ages that we could have as part of the workforce in the UK. And then I created a custom grouping for each of those different ages. And then I have an order for kind of custom ordering them if I want to show them in Power BI. And let's say we want to create or have this static table in our report, in our Power BI desktop report. So the first thing that you're going to do is we're going to copy this table, Control C, and we're going to go to Power BI desktop here. Now, instead of saying get data from Excel, which you would typically do, we can just click enter data here. And this lets us copy and paste the table that we've just copied. So if you hit Control V, there we go. So that's our mapping table created as a static table. So we just simply need to, you can just load it by itself. So just name it age grouping, but when you load it by itself, they are not defined, their data types aren't defined. So I typically would go to edit to open up Power Query. So this is the query that we've created, the age group, and then I would change these into the right data type. So this would be whole number as well as this one. So if you look at the step here, instead of the source getting the data from a file, from an Excel workbook, it instead decompresses the file from this binary data. So the data that you have here is basically created here in your data model and is stored as binary text. If you want to edit the table that you have created, you can simply just click the cog icon next to the source step, and it will bring up that same view that you had initially, and then this will let you just change the values here as you like. And that's it. Now let's have a look at some of the options available for you if you want to use DAX. And the one that I am pretty familiar with and that I have used in the past is the row function, which lets you define in the same parameters, define the column headers that you want as well as the values as static values. And then if you want to create a table out of the rows, you simply just use the union function to stack these rows on top of each other. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So here we are in my Power BI desktop. We've just loaded up the age grouping here. We're actually going to ignore that. We're going to go and insert, or under modeling, create a new table here, which will let us create a DAX table. We're going to call this one totals. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start typing row, and here it gives me the option to add a name and expression. So the name and the expression combination would be the column header and the value in that column. So if we add, let's say, the name would be total sales, and then I just add 10. let's just close that, and then let me show you how that looks like. So you see what it's done is it's added a new column called total sales, and in that column it's added a row which is the value of 10. So if we go back to that DAX table, we can add more columns and expressions combination in this row function. So let's say we want to add total orders. Let's make it 15. And then let's say total discount 20. So as you expect, if we go now to the table view, it's created a one row with all of these 3 different columns with the expressions that we have put in this row function. Then as I mentioned before, if you wanted to create, multiple rows within this table, you just need to create more rows defining the column headers and the expressions, and then combine them all using the union function. So the union basically just lets you add tables and then append them on top of each other, which if you have multiple row functions will let you do exactly that. So I'm gonna paste the row function that we've just copied, and then add the comma, and then paste another row here. And then just to show you as an example, add another row here. And if I hit enter, go back to the table view, as you can see, it added 3 different rows with those 3 different row functions combined using the union function. So I use the row and union function quite a lot. Or I had to use the union and the row functions recently for my workplace, and that's because I needed the ability to change the expressions in these tables to be based on results from my measures. Now, let's say, for example, we have some measures here in my calculations measure table, and I have a bunch of things here like total sales, total orders, and discounts. And by themselves, I just put some random values in there, but they could be different calculations that results in different things. And what I wanted to do is that for every single time that I update the reports, the value in these expressions within the row tables also change based on the results of these measures. Now, what I need to do, or the only thing that I need to do, is just simply update these expressions to just use the measures that I've created. So total sales, total orders, total discounts, and just like that, you pretty much have a table that changes its values based on the measures that you kind of already set up. Now, it doesn't really make this table a static table anymore because it changes based on the data that you have, but I just wanted to show you like some of the reasons why you might want to use kind of the row function in this sense. So using the combination of row and union works pretty well. However, I just find it to be a little bit inefficient. That's because for every row you have to always define the column header, and you have to keep saying that it's a row, even though that we know that it's always going to be the same, because otherwise the union will break. Now, there is another option that you can use, which is called DATATABLE, which pretty much does the exact same thing, except I feel like in terms of syntax, it's a lot cleaner, or it's a lot easier to sort of read. So I'm going to show you how to write the DATATABLE function. So I'm going to call this one totals2, and then I'm going to use DATATABLE here. So the first thing about the data table is you need to define what the column headers that you want. So in this case, let's just create like an example table, right? So let's define a few different columns that we want in this. So maybe let's start with a category. So you define your column and you define the type of that column. So in this case, we're gonna use category as a string. The next column, we want product. And this one is also a string. And then the last one we'll call total sales. And then this one might be an integer, let's just say. And then now that you've defined that, we now define the values in those columns in the right order that we have put them up there. So we're using a curly brackets to say that it's going to be an array. And in this array, there's going to be another array, which is the array of all of the values in each row. And then here, we're going to just put the values for our column. So first column category, we're just going to say condiments, comma. Next thing is the product's name. Let's say ketchup. And then the total sales could be 20. And then and that's basically your row done. Now, if you want to add another row, you just need to add another comma, another curly bracket, and then just do the same sequence. So let's say dairy as your category, and then the product would be milk, and then the value would be 15. And then that's it. So if you hit enter, hopefully there are no errors. And if you have a look, as you can see, it's created that table. It's created the column headers. You've just had to define it once, and then it created all of those different rows for you. Now, I find DATATABLE to be a lot cleaner in terms of creating static tables, just because you only need to define the category headers once, and then everything else that you add in your rows is you just add it in these curly brackets. And I feel like it's a lot cleaner, especially if you need to create a static table with a lot more rows than the two that we've just created here. So I feel like this will be a lot easier to manage and a lot easier to read than using the row and union. And that's really it for this video. I hope you now know the kind of different options that you have when it comes to creating your own static tables in Power BI. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so that to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.